The Tjernagel family's story of survival begins in the 1850s when they emigrated from Norway and settled here on a place they called Follinglo Farm. Over the decades, they built a life here, raising shorthorn cattle, crops, and generations of children. On December 9, 1968, Peter and Marie Tjernagel and their family were just about to enjoy their evening meal when tragedy struck.
Mom had just come out from the bathroom into the kitchen, and Mike was getting Dad up.
Dad had rheumatoid arthritis, so I was getting him ready. It sounded like a jet, and I think I mentioned to him, boy, that one is low.
Just this incredibly loud sound. We'd had sonic booms over the farm, so we were kind of, familiar with that. But this just wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop. Just kept getting louder and louder, and then kaboom!
Then I went over the table, landed at Mom's feet, and when I got up, that whole wall was gone. There wasn't a stove, an oven, anything. And then the upstairs came down. So we started running.
The explosion sent burning wreckage onto the farmhouse, engulfing it in flames. Miraculously, all 7 family members who were home that night escaped.
I kept turning around because I just couldn't believe. I just couldn't believe it. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we were driving away from it, so it should have been getting smaller. And it just blew my mind. Until we were on the way to Story City, I was convinced that it was the oven that blew up. And Mary Ellen said, she just reached over and said, no, it was an airplane.
25 minutes earlier, an Iowa Air National Guard F-89 Scorpion left Des Moines. The pilot was Captain John Brooks of Eldora, and the radar operator was Lieutenant Larry Thomas of Ogden. They were on a training mission with 3 other Iowa Air Guard planes.
I worked in personnel full-time. I saw the 2 guys. They'd always come in together. Night flying usually started around 5 or 6 o'clock and lasted for about 90 minutes. The F-89J Scorpion, it was one of the first jets in the Air Force. We called it a lead sled because it took the whole runway to get off the ground. So they were out doing a little bit of dogfighting type thing. The crew got kind of behind on the rest of the other 2 airplanes and the bigger plane they were protecting. And they got kind of lost, and they were up pretty high, and they somehow become inverted. And the yard lights looked like stars. They didn't believe their instruments. They thought they could see where the sky was. So they were pulling back on the joystick to go higher, but they're actually going lower. And they were kicking in the afterburners to go faster to get more lift, and they were actually going faster into the ground.
I believe with all my heart that he tried to steer it as far from populated area. And I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe he just couldn't do anything. But in my mind, he did all that he humanly could.
And they basically should be heroes because they were training to defend this country.
The loss was heavy for the pilots' families. But somehow the Tjernagels escaped with only minor injuries.
That was a big moment, for all of us, was like, yeah, it's all gone, everything.
That's a terrible thing when you finally realize the only thing you have is on your body. And then not everything was mine.
By the next night, we were in a house. And that house had...
It was totally furnished.
Beds.
Totally furnished.
And
beds
that
were made. Everything.
Yeah. There were Kleenex boxes. There was toilet paper. There were toothbrushes. And this was before email and texting. This is word of mouth. Everybody did what they could. They came together.
And then the Christmas tree.
When we moved in that Tuesday night, there was this Christmas tree with the boxes of decorations underneath it so that we could decorate it. They thought we would enjoy doing that.
So sweet.
And that was very thoughtful.
The support of the Story City community would fortify the Tjernagel family in the trying days to come. Just a few weeks after the crash, Pete Tjernagel passed away, and the responsibility for rebuilding fell to Marie. She would need to go to school, find a job, and begin what would turn into a 4-year process of requesting compensation for the damages to their property, their farm equipment, and the loss of the entire 1968 crop.
The insurance company was willing to settle, but she was advised not to. Let's see what the Air Force.
And then throughout all of this time, she has to list everything that was in the house that we lost. Everything.
The purchase, when we purchased it, the purchase price, and the value.
State and federal governments squabbled over who would take responsibility.
The frustration and the suspension and the, oh, you name it. It's been so hard, not knowing. You can't make plans. You don't know if the money is coming. You don't like to borrow because the interest rates are so high when you don't have any idea when the money will be coming in.
So she was kind of stuck between two great big bureaucracies, and nobody was listening to her. You know, they were ignoring the plight of two families in Iowa.
This is all that remains of the Clarence McCarville farm home east of Cresco. An Air Force F-102 crashed into it this morning.
The incident at the Tjernagel farm was the second crash in Iowa that year. 6 months earlier, a Wisconsin Air National Guard plane went down near Cresco. That pilot safely ejected, but his plane destroyed the home of Clarence and Emma McCarville. Years later, the McCarvilles were still living in a chicken coop. Numerous newspaper articles detailed the family's situation, drawing attention to the problem. Senator Harold Hughes proposed legislation for the relief of the Tjernagel family. The people of Story City came through again when a sociology class started a petition and collected 14,000 signatures. And when President Nixon came to Iowa to dedicate Lake Rathbun, Governor Bob Ray spoke to him about both families' claims.
Ray finally, in a fit of pique, said, I'm not going to take this anymore. And as commander-in-chief of the Iowa Guard, signed a document that grounded the Guard. They couldn't fly a plane, they couldn't fly a chopper, they couldn't move a truck, they couldn't drive a Jeep. You're done.
Iowa Governor Robert Ray said he was fed up with all the delays, which he said was a bad case of government buck-passing. He ordered all methods of transportation of the state's Air and Army National Guard units grounded. The order put nearly 1,700 vehicles out of business. But the daring move worked, and less than 24 hours later, the Air Force dropped their opposition to the claim.
It was drastic action, and I intended it to be, because if that's what it takes to get the federal government to realize they have a responsibility to people in this country, then I was willing to do that. After all, they're there to protect our people, not destroy them.
This isn't just the Tjernagel story. This is a Story City story.
That's true.
It's an Iowa story. It's a small town story. It's a story
It's a story of a woman who never wanted to tell that story.
The story inspired Sigrid's daughter Jen and her husband Marcus to produce a podcast chronicling the tragedy. It's called Follinglo.
I'd known of the story my whole life, but I didn't know the details. And so just getting to hear these perspectives and the individual stories, it just brought up a whole new level of respect for my mom, my aunt, my grandmother, you know, everyone.
The worst can happen, but it doesn't have to ruin your life forever.
We were all placed exactly where we needed to be. And the worst didn't happen to us. The worst happened to the pilot's family and the navigator's family. We didn't lose a brother, a husband, a father. They did.